My name is Abigail Wilson, and I'm 32 years old. Today should have been the happiest day of my life, standing in front of Sweet Memories, my very own bakery, after years of culinary school and saving every penny. Despite everything that happened with my family, I still invited them to the grand opening. Maybe deep down, I hoped they'd finally see my worth after they took my inheritance, the money Grandma Alos left specifically to fund this dream. As I arranged the display case one last time, my stomach knotted with both excitement and dread. Before I tell you how my family's arrival turned my dream day into a nightmare, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe for more stories about following your dreams despite those who try to hold you back. Some of my earliest memories are standing on a step stool in my grandmother Alos's kitchen. While other kids played with toys, I played with measuring cups and wooden spoons. Grandma's hands, dusted with flour, would guide mine as we kneaded dough for her famous cinnamon rolls. Baking isn't just about following recipes, Abby, she'd say, her blue eyes twinkling. It's about pouring your heart into something that brings people joy. By the time I was 10, I could make her signature blackberry pie blindfolded. The neighbors would rave that mine was almost as good as Alos's, which was the highest compliment anyone could receive. Grandma kept her recipes in a worn leather-bound book, adding notes and secrets in her delicate handwriting. Someday, Abby, she'd whisper, all these recipes will be yours. You'll make people happy with them long after I'm gone. My parents never understood my passion. My father, Richard, was a financial advisor who measured success in dollar signs and stock options. My mother, Margaret, was always more concerned with appearances than happiness. They saw cooking as a hobby, not a career. Culinary school is for people who can't get into real college, my father said when I brought up the subject during my senior year of high school. No daughter of mine is going to waste her potential flipping pancakes. To please them, I enrolled at the state university and majored in business administration. My roommate, Stephanie, would often find me stress baking at 2 a.m. before exams. Your cupcakes got me through organic chemistry, she joked once. You're wasting your talent on spreadsheets. My brother Jason, 2 years older and my father's perfect clone, had followed the expected path. Business school, MBA, and a job at a prestigious consulting firm. Whenever he came home for holidays, my parents beamed with pride. Why can't you be more like your brother? Became the soundtrack to my college years. But weekends were my salvation. I'd work at a local cafe, learning commercial baking and saving tips for what I privately called my escape fund. The cafe owner, Alina, recognized my talent and let me experiment with specials that often sold out by noon. When Grandma Alos passed away during my senior year of college, I was devastated. At her funeral, I promised her silently that I would honor her legacy. After graduation, I took the corporate job my father arranged at his friend's marketing firm. For 5 years, I lived in a tiny apartment, working 9 to 5 in a cubicle I hated, and saving every possible dollar. Nights and weekends were spent taking classes at the local culinary institute and perfecting Grandma's recipe. I started a small side business, taking orders from colleagues and friends for birthday cakes and holiday treats. Word spread, and soon my weekends were fully booked with orders I'd fulfill from my cramped apartment kitchen. When my refrigerator couldn't hold another cake box, and I was sleeping only 4 hours a night to keep up with demand, I knew it was time. The day I quit my corporate job, my father didn't speak to me for 2 months. My mother called daily with job listings. It's not too late to apologize to Mr. Peterson and get your position back, she'd plead. Jason sent me articles about business failure rates, highlighting the statistics for restaurants and bakeries. Finding the right location took months. I walked every neighborhood, studied foot traffic, and researched demographics until I found it a former bookstore with large windows and charm in a gentrifying neighborhood with no bakery for 3 blocks. The rent was steep, but the location was perfect. Renovations nearly broke me financially and emotionally. The ancient plumbing needed complete replacement. The health inspector found electrical issues. Every time I solved one problem, 2 more appeared. My savings dwindled alarmingly. Through it all, I held on to Grandma Alos's recipe book like a talisman. At night, when doubts crept in, I'd flip through it, reading her notes, add extra vanilla here, or patience is key for this dough. Sometimes, I swear I could smell her perfume, cinnamon and vanilla encouraging me forward. Creating my menu was like putting together pieces of my heart. Grandma's blackberry pie became my signature, Alos's legacy pie. Her cinnamon rolls evolved into morning buns with orange zest and cardamom. I added my own creations: 2 lavender shortbread, chocolate tahini cookies, and savory breakfast tarts that would have made her proud. Each recipe was tested dozens of times. My apartment neighbors became willing taste testers, offering feedback and encouragement. "When you open your bakery," my downstairs neighbor Mr. Gomez would say, "I'll be first in line." His confidence in me never wavered, even when mine did. Every night before falling asleep, I'd visualize the bakery, the gleaming display cases, the smell of butter and sugar, the bell tinkling as customers entered. This dream sustained me through renovation disasters, permit delays, and the gnawing fear that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. When I finally held the keys to what would become Sweet Memories Bakery, I stood alone in the empty space and cried for Grandma Alos, who didn't live to see this day, for the years spent in cubicle purgatory, and for the road ahead, however uncertain it might be. The first fracture in my relationship with my family came 3 years ago, just weeks after we buried Grandma Alos. We gathered in Mr. Blanchard's law office, the family attorney who had handled my grandparents' affairs for decades. The room was somber, mahogany furniture and law books creating the perfect backdrop for family drama. To my granddaughter, Abigail, Mr. Blanchard read from the will, adjusting his reading glasses. "I leave my complete collection of recipes, including all notes and personal cooking journals. Additionally, I leave the sum of $50,000 to be used specifically for the establishment of her bakery business, which she has spoken of since childhood." I gasped. Grandma had never mentioned this to me. $50,000 enough for startup costs, equipment, and a safety net for those precarious first months of business. Tears filled my eyes as I realized she had believed in me all along. I looked up to see my father's face darken and my mother's lips press into a thin line. Jason studied his fingernails, suddenly intensely interested in his cuticles. "She left you $50,000 for a bakery," my father said later that evening at their house, his voice a mixture of disbelief and something else, resentment. "Maybe, that's irresponsible. You have no business experience." "I have a business degree, Dad," I reminded him, "and I've been working in marketing for 2 years. "Marketing tishashks is hardly the same as running a sustainable business," he scoffed. "Restaurants fail at an alarming rate, bakeries even faster." My mother sat beside me on the couch, her hand on mine in that way she had, seemingly supportive while actually applying pressure. "Sweetheart, your father and I are just concerned. That's a lot of money to risk on something so uncertain." Jason, ever the practical voice of family consensus, chimed in from across the room. "What if you put the money in the family emergency fund for now? Give yourself time to develop a comprehensive business plan, maybe work under an established baker first. If it still makes sense in a year or 2, the money will be there." It sounded reasonable when he said it. That was Jason's talent, making terrible ideas sound sensible. And I wanted so badly to prove I wasn't the impulsive, irresponsible daughter they thought I was. "We could help you manage it," my father added. "Make sure it grows a bit in the meantime." Against every instinct, I agreed. My father set up a special account, requiring both his signature and mine for withdrawals, just to make sure it's used as intended, he explained. 6 months later, when I asked to access some funds for a pastry course, there was always a reason to wait. The market was down. Mercury was in retrograde. The timing wasn't right. A year passed, then another. I continued working at the marketing firm, taking night classes, building my side business. Each time I brought up the inheritance, the conversations grew more strained. Then came the day I discovered the truth. I had stopped by my parents' house unexpectedly, letting myself in with my emergency key when no one answered. Voices from my father's study drew me down the hall. "The Series B funding will come through," Jason was saying. "We just need to bridge the gap." $50,000 is a significant amount," my father replied. "Are you sure there's no other source?" "We've leveraged everything else," Jason sounded desperate. "This is Abigail's money we're talking about." I froze outside the door, my hand covering my mouth. "It's practically gone anyway," my father sighed. "The tech startup investments didn't perform as expected." My inheritance. By bakery seed money. They had invested it in Jason's tech venture without telling me. The room spun around me, and I must have made a noise, because suddenly the conversation stopped, and both men were staring at me from the study doorway. What followed was the ugliest confrontation of my life. Accusations, justifications, my father insisting they had planned to replace the money with interest once Jason's company took off. How could you? I kept asking, my voice breaking. It was mine, Grandma left it for my bakery. Be realistic, Abby, Jason said condescendingly. Your little hobby bakery would have failed within a year. At least my company has real growth potential. My company is using the latest blockchain technology, Jason continued, as if that explained everything. Once we secure the next round of funding, the returns will be substantial. You'll get your money back doubled, maybe tripled. My mother, arriving home midway through the fight, tried her usual peacekeeping tactics. Everyone calm down, we're family, we'll work this out. But some betrayals cut too deep for platitudes. I left that night and didn't speak to any of them for months. When we did finally communicate again, it was strained, surface level. They never acknowledged the wrong, and I never forgave it. I redoubled my efforts at saving, working overtime at the marketing firm and taking every catering job I could handle. My apartment became a production kitchen, and sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. 6 months after the confrontation, I met Michael at a friend's dinner party where I'd provided the dessert. He was a restaurant supplier who immediately recognized my passion and talent. Unlike my family, he asked questions about my dream, listened to my plans, and offered practical advice instead of discouragement. Our relationship progressed quickly. Michael knew the industry, understood the challenges, and still believed I could succeed. When he offered to invest in my future bakery as a silent partner, I hesitated, the betrayal still fresh. I'm not your family, Abigail, he said, seeing my reluctance. This is a business decision. I believe in your talent, and I've seen your determination. This isn't charity, it's an investment I expect to see returns on. His faith in me was the balm my wounded confidence needed. With his investment supplementing my savings, the bakery dream moved from someday to now. The decision to invite my family to the grand opening was agonizing. Michael thought I should cut them out entirely. My therapist suggested boundaries but acknowledged the importance of family in milestone moments. My own heart was a battlefield of anger, hope, and that persistent desire for parental approval that never quite dies, no matter how grown you are. In the end, I sent the invitations. Maybe some part of me wanted them to see what I had built despite their lack of faith. Maybe I wanted to prove Grandma Los right. Or maybe, despite everything, I just wanted my family there on the most important day of my life. The week leading up to the grand opening was a blur of lists, last-minute decisions, and too little sleep. My kitchen staff consisted of just 3 people: myself, Zoe, a recent culinary school graduate with purple hair and incredible piping skills, and Ryan, a former corporate banker who had switched careers in his 30s, much to his family's dismay, creating an immediate bond between us. Abigail, we need to finalize the opening day menu, Zoe reminded me as we tested our 5th variation of lemon curd. And the signage company called about the outdoor display. Ryan was meticulously testing each oven, documenting hot spots and temperature calibrations in his precise handwriting. The health inspector's final visit is tomorrow at 9, he called out. I've got the checklist prepped. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night all week, but adrenaline kept me going. This was everything I had worked for. Every detail mattered: the vintage cake stands I'd collected from flea markets, the hand-lettered menu boards, even the specific shade of blue for our packaging that matched Grandma Los's eye. The night before opening, Michael arrived at the bakery at 10 p.m. with dinner and determination. You 3 need food that isn't sugar-based, he announced, setting up containers of pasta from my favorite Italian restaurant. And then we're doing a marathon baking session. I may not be a baker, but I can wash dishes and fetch ingredients with the best of them. We worked through the night, the 4 of us moving in a choreographed dance around the kitchen. By 6 a.m., the display cases were filled with artisanal breads, delicate pastries, rustic tarts, and my signature items based on Grandma's recipes. Every surface gleamed, and the aroma was heavenly: butter, sugar, cinnamon, and possibility. I sent Zoe and Ryan home to catch a few hours of sleep before the 11 a.m. opening, but I couldn't leave. My space felt magical in the early morning light. I walked through the front of house, straightening already straight chairs, adjusting flower arrangements, and mentally rehearsing what I would say to my first customers. And if I'm being honest, what I would say to my family when they arrived. Michael returned at 10 a.m. with a stunning arrangement of blue hydrangeas, Grandma Los's favorite. For the counter, he said, kissing my cheek. And these are just for you. He handed me a smaller bouquet of daisies. Your grandmother would be so proud, Abigail. I wish I could have met her. I placed the hydrangeas at the register and tucked one daisy into my apron pocket, right over my heart. "She's here," I said, blinking back tears. "She's in every recipe, every corner of this place." At precisely 11 a.m., I unlocked the doors. I'd promoted the opening primarily through local channels, neighborhood social media, flyers in nearby businesses, and word of mouth from my catering clients. I expected a modest crowd for the first day. What I got was a line down the block. "Are all these people here for us?" Zoe whispered, wide-eyed, as we peeked through the window. I recognized some faces, former colleagues, neighbors, friends, but many were strangers, drawn by the promise of fresh baked goods and the charming storefront. The first few hours were a whirlwind. The register rang constantly. Zoe and Ryan moved with professional efficiency, describing pastries, boxing orders, and charming customers. I bounced between the front counter and the kitchen, refilling trays and greeting people I knew. "These cinnamon rolls are better than my grandmother's, and I'd kill anyone else who said that," declared Mrs. Finch, my former neighbor, loud enough for everyone to hear. The line of customers laughed, and something tight in my chest loosened just a bit. But as noon approached, the time my family had promised to arrive, I found myself glancing at the door with increasing frequency. Michael noticed, giving my hand a squeeze whenever he passed. "They'll be here," he assured me, though I could tell he wasn't sure if he wanted that to be true. At 12:30, my phone buzzed with a text from Jason: "Running late, traffic, start without us." I pasted on my professional smile and continued serving customers, but a familiar heaviness settled in my stomach. Of course they were late. This was important to me, after all. By 1 p.m., the initial rush had slowed to a steady stream. The young woman with a press badge approached the counter, introducing herself as Lily from the neighborhood blog. "I'd love to do a feature on sweet memories," she said, already taking photos of the display case. "New businesses are the lifeblood of this area, and everything looks amazing. Would you have time for a few questions?" I glanced at the door again, still no sign of my family, then turned back to Lily with a genuine smile. "I'd be honored. Let me show you around." For the next 30 minutes, I gave Lily a tour, explaining my background, my grandmother's influence, and my vision for sweet memories. She took notes enthusiastically, stopping occasionally to photograph particularly beautiful pastries or the vintage touches in the decor. "You've created something special here," she said as we finished the interview. "I can tell this isn't just a business for you, it's a passion." Her words warmed me, temporarily displacing my disappointment about my family's absence. This was why I had done all this, not for their approval, but for the joy of creating something meaningful. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself checking my phone more frequently. 2 o'clock passed. Then 3, with each hour, my hope dimmed a little more. "Maybe they got caught in a real emergency," Ryan suggested kindly, seeing my distraction. "Or maybe they're just being themselves," I replied, with more bitterness than I intended. At 3:30 p.m., just when I'd almost given up, the bell above the door chimed. I looked up from the espresso machine to see them, my father in his crisp business suit, my mother in her perfectly coordinated outfit, and Jason, hand in hand with a blonde woman I didn't recognize. They had made it, 3.5 hours late, but they were here. Despite everything, my heart lifted until I saw the tight smile on my father's face as he surveyed my dream with critical eyes, and the real nightmare began. "Abigail, darling," my mother air-kissed both my cheeks, her perfume enveloping me in a cloud of expensive floral notes. "The place is quaint." I knew Margaret Wilson well enough to translate. Quaint meant small, unimpressive, exactly what she had expected. "This is quite a location you've chosen," my father commented, eyeing the space with the same expression he used when assessing underperforming investments. "Rent must be astronomical in this neighborhood. Hope you've budgeted properly for that." Already, the joy I'd felt all day was curdling into something sour. I reminded myself to breathe. They were here. That was what mattered, wasn't it? Jason approached next, his arm around the blonde woman. "Great to see you, sis. This is Amber. Thought I'd bring her along today." Amber extended a manicured hand, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I've heard so much about you. Your little bakery is adorable." Something about her was naggingly familiar, but I couldn't place it. "Thank you for coming. Would you all like to try some pastries? The maple pecan sticky buns are Grandma Alos's recipe." "Oh, we can't stay long," my father checked his watch. "We have dinner reservations at Marcel's at 6, and we still need to change." Marcel's was the most expensive restaurant in the city, a pointed reminder of the wealth hierarchy in our family. We have time to sample something small, my mother interjected, always the peacekeeper. Everything looks interesting. I led them to a reserved table by the window, where Michael had thoughtfully set up a tasting platter of my signature items. He materialized from the kitchen now, wiping his hands on a towel. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, good to see you again," he said, extending his hand to my father, who barely grasped it before letting go. "Michael," my father nodded curtly. He had never approved of Michael, considering him beneath our family's status despite his successful business. "Still playing restaurateur, I see." "Supporting talented bakers, actually," Michael replied smoothly. "Abigail has created something extraordinary." I introduced Michael to Amber, who seemed oddly reluctant to shake his hand. As they exchanged pleasantries, I finally placed where I'd seen her before. She owned Crumb and Sugar, a chain bakery with locations throughout the city, including one just 2 blocks away. My heart sank. Of all the women in the city, Jason had to date my direct competitor. My family picked at the pastries, offering lukewarm compliments that felt more like condolences. "The presentation is nice," from my mother. "Interesting flavor combination," from my father. Jason barely ate anything, tapping on his phone instead. "So Abigail," Amber finally spoke up, "Jason tells me this is your first venture into the industry. It's admirable to jump into such a competitive market with no experience." "I've been baking professionally for years," I corrected her. "I ran a successful catering business before opening the storefront." "Oh, from your apartment, right," Amber laughed lightly. "That's how I started too, before scaling to 7 locations. It's quite a different ball game running a real commercial operation." The emphasis on real wasn't subtle. I felt Michael tense beside me. "Amber's latest location just received angel investor funding," Jason announced proudly. "They're expanding to the waterfront district next month." "That's wonderful," I said automatically, though I felt a creeping sense of dread. "Angel investors." "Actually, that's something we wanted to discuss with you," my father interjected, setting down his half-eaten kvass. "Your brother has made an excellent investment opportunity available to us." "Us," I repeated. "The family," he clarified. "We've put a significant amount into Amber's expansion plans. The return potential is excellent, given her proven track record." The pieces clicked into horrible place. "You invested in her bakery chain. With what money?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My mother suddenly became very interested in her napkin. "Well, your inheritance had already been allocated to Jason's tech venture," my father said matter-of-factly. "But when that faced some challenges, we had to pivot. Amber's business represents a much more stable investment opportunity." "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous calm that anyone who knew me would recognize as the eye of the storm. "You took the money Grandma left specifically for my bakery, first invested it in Jason's failed startup, and then put what was left into my direct competitor's business." "It's not personal, Abby," Jason shrugged. "It's just good business. Amber has a proven model. 7 locations, standardized products, economies of scale. The growth potential." "Stop," I cut him off. "Just stop talking." Amber smiled, that not quite reaching her eyes smile again. "If it makes you feel any better, we're using some of the investment to open our 8th location. It's going to be our flagship store." She paused for effect. "Right across the street, actually. The lease is being finalized next week." The floor seemed to drop away beneath me. A bakery chain directly across from my fledgling business would be devastating. The economies of scale meant she could undercut my prices while still turning a profit. Her established brand would draw customers away from my unknown shop. "You knew," I said, looking at my brother with new understanding. "You knew exactly what this would do to me." "Don't be dramatic, Abigail," my father cut in. "Competition is healthy in a capitalist economy. If your business model is sound, you'll survive. If not," he shrugged, "well, there's always a place for you at the firm." I became aware that the bakery had gone quiet. The few remaining afternoon customers were watching our family drama unfold with undisguised interest. Zoe and Ryan stood frozen behind the counter, looking unsure whether to intervene. "Your grandmother's recipes are charming," Amber continued, either oblivious to the tension or, more likely, enjoying it. "So homespun and traditional. We've been working with a molecular gastronomy consultant to elevate classic recipes. Jason shared some of your grandmother's techniques with me for research purposes." You shared Grandma's recipes. I turned to Jason, disbelieving. Those weren't yours to share. Oh please, Jason rolled his eyes. They're just recipes. Amber's team made them better anyway. Something inside me shattered the last remnant of hope that my family might someday support me, understand me, love me as I was. Get out, I said quietly. I beg your pardon, my father's eyebrows shot up. Get out, I repeated, louder this time. All of you now. My mother looked mortified. Abigail, people are washing, let's not make a scene. A scene, I laughed, the sound brittle and dangerous. You want to talk about scenes, Mother? How about the scene where you and Dad stole my inheritance? Or the scene where you invested it in my competitor? Or maybe the scene where Jason gave away family recipes that didn't belong to him? We'll discuss this privately, my father hissed, standing up. You're being unprofessional. No, I'm being honest for the first time in years, I shot back. You never believed in me. You never supported my dreams. You actively worked to sabotage me. And now you have the audacity to show up hours late to my grand opening and tell me you're funding my competition. Michael moved to my side, his presence solid and reassuring. I think it's best if you leave now, he told my family, his voice calm but firm. Typical, my father sneered. Hiding behind your boyfriend instead of handling business matters directly. This is why we didn't trust you with the inheritance, Abigail. You've always been too emotional, too impractical. At least she's honest, Michael replied, and talented, and brave enough to follow her dreams despite having zero support from the people who should have been her biggest champion. We'll see how brave she feels when her little bakery fails in 6 months, Jason retorted, helping Amber with her coat. When that happens, don't come crawling back to us. I wouldn't crawl back to you if I was starving in the street, I said, my voice shaking with rage and hurt. Now please leave my bakery. As they gathered their things, my mother tried one last peacekeeping attempt. Let's all calm down. We're family. We can work through this. No, Mom, we're relatives. There's a difference. I stood my ground until they walked out the door. As the bell tingled behind them, the silence in the bakery was deafening. Then, to my mortification, I burst into tears right there in front of my remaining customers and staff. I'm so sorry, I managed between sobs. We'll be closing early today, thank you for your understanding. Michael flipped the sign to closed as Zoe and Ryan gently ushered the last few wide-eyed customers out with free pastry boxes as consolation. And just like that, my dream opening day ended in public humiliation and tears, exactly what my family had predicted all along. I spent that night curled on my couch with Michael, alternating between rage and despair. Maybe they're right, I whispered into the darkness. Maybe this was all a terrible mistake. That's the hurt talking, Michael replied, stroking my hair. You sold out of almost everything today. People loved your food. People love car crashes too. Doesn't mean they're good business opportunities. The next morning brought the brutal reality of social media. Jason had posted a thinly veiled critique of Sweet Memories on his profiles, disappointed by new neighborhood bakery. Overpriced, underwhelming offerings. Save your money for established professional. Amber's business page featured a coming soon announcement for their new location, complete with opening specials designed to undercut my prices by nearly 50%. Then the cancellations started. First, a bridal shower tea I'd been scheduled to cater the following weekend. Then 2 birthday cake orders. By noon, I'd lost over $2,000 in upcoming business. They're all saying the same thing, Zoe reported grimly as she hung up the phone. They've heard we're going out of business soon and don't want to risk placing orders. Where would they hear that? I wondered aloud, though I already knew. The Wilson family influence ran deep in certain social circles. We'll recover, Ryan assured me, always the practical optimist. Word of mouth about our quality will outweigh the rumors. But that afternoon, another blow landed, a notice from my landlord, informing me of a rent increase, effective immediately. The escalation clause, he cited, seemed suspiciously convenient, especially when I remembered that the building owner, Franklin, was an old college friend of Jason. This can't be legal, Michael said, reading the notice over my shoulder. He can't raise rent in the middle of a lease term. Check the fine print, I said bitterly. I bet there's some loophole Jason told him about. Sure enough, the lease contained an obscure clause allowing for market rate adjustments, under certain conditions that hadn't existed when I signed but somehow did now. The phone rang, and I answered to find my bank officer on the line. Miss Wilson, we're calling about some irregularities with your business loan payments, she began. What irregularities? The payment went through last week, I checked. Yes, but there seems to be a discrepancy with your revenue projections. We've received information suggesting significant changes to your competitive landscape that weren't disclosed in your loan application. My blood ran cold. What information, from whom? I'm not at liberty to say, but we'll need to schedule a review of your loan terms as soon as possible. By closing time, I sat shell-shocked in my office, the converted storage closet behind the kitchen. The day's sales had been abysmal. The social media storm was growing, and now my financial foundation was under attack. They're trying to bury me, I told Michael when he arrived with dinner I couldn't eat. This is coordinated. Then we fight back, he said simply. We get legal advice about the inheritance, the recipes, all of it. With what money? Every spare cent I have is tied up in this place, and now they're threatening my loan. Michael took my hands. Abigail, listen to me, you have options. I can loan the business more capital. We can consult attorneys who work on contingency. But first, you need to decide if this is what you really want. What do you mean? I mean, fighting your family is going to get uglier before it gets better. Are you prepared for that? Is this dream worth it to you? I looked around at my tiny bakery. Despite everything, I felt a surge of fierce pride. Yes, I said finally. They've taken enough from me. They don't get to take this too. That night, I barely slept. Around 4 a.m., I gave up and went down to the bakery to stress bake my lifelong coping mechanism. By dawn, I had created 3 new pastry varieties and reorganized the entire storage system. When Zoe arrived at 6 a.m., she found me covered in flour but calmer. Game face on, I told her. We've got a business to save. But the universe wasn't finished testing me. As I unlocked the front door, I gasped. The beautiful window display had been smashed, glass everywhere. Inside, flour had been dumped across the counters and floor, and crude graffiti covered one wall. Ryan arrived moments later, followed by the police. As we gave statements and documented the damage, I noticed the security camera in the corner, the one Michael had insisted on installing despite my budget concern. The camera, I pointed. We need to check the footage. The officer nodded, and soon we were watching grainy black and white footage from 3 a.m. A hooded figure approached the store, looked around furtively, then smashed the window with a crowbar. As he turned to survey his work, his hood slipped back slightly. Stop right there, I said. Can you zoom in? The image wasn't crystal clear, but it was clear enough. The vandal was Craig Henderson, another of Jason's fraternity brothers who'd remained in his social circle. Do you recognize this individual? The officer asked, noting my reaction. I hesitated only briefly before answering. Yes, his name is Craig Henderson. He's a friend of my brother. As I said it aloud, the full weight of what was happening hit me. This wasn't just business competition or family disapproval. This was sabotage, coordinated and deliberate. They were willing to destroy my dream by any means necessary. The officer took down the information, promising to follow up. After he left, I sank onto a flour-covered stool, overwhelmed by the mess, both literal and figurative, surrounding me. What now, boss? Ryan asked quietly. I looked up at him and Zoe, these people who had believed in my vision enough to join me on this risky venture. I thought about Michael, who had invested not just money but faith in me. I remembered Grandma Los and her unwavering belief in my talent. Now, I said, standing up and grabbing a broom, we clean up, we bake, we open even if it's an hour late, and we figure out how to fight back. I had hit rock bottom, just as my family had predicted. But unlike their expectations, I wasn't giving up. Not today, not ever. As we swept up glass and scrubbed graffiti, a tentative knock came at the damaged door. Ellen Mercer, a regular customer who always ordered my lavender shortbread, peered in through the broken window. Abigail. My goodness, what happened? She stepped carefully over the glass shards, her elegant gray bob swinging with the motion. Vandalism, I explained, too exhausted for details. We're trying to clean up to open today. Ellen surveyed the damage with narrowed eyes. This wasn't random, was it? Something about her directness broke through my professional facade. Before I knew it, I was telling her everything: the inheritance, Jason and Amber's competitive sabotage, my family's betrayal, even Craig's likely involvement in the vandalism. I'm sorry, I finally said, realizing I'd been ranting. You came for coffee, not my life story. Actually, Ellen replied, setting down her purse and picking up a cleaning rag, I'm glad I know, because this is unacceptable. As she helped us clean, Ellen revealed something I hadn't known. She was a former marketing executive who now ran a lifestyle blog with over 100,000 local followers. "I've been meaning to feature sweet memories anyway," she said. "Your grandmother's blackberry pie recipe saved my dinner party last month." By noon, we managed to open with a makeshift cardboard window covering and a limited selection of pastries. To my surprise, we had a line out the door. "What's happening?" I asked Ryan, who was manning the register while I frantically baked more inventory. "Ellen posted about the vandalism on her social media," he explained between customers. "She shared our story. People are coming to support us." That afternoon, Ellen's post went viral within our local community. #support sweet memories began trending in our city's social media. The neighborhood blog that had interviewed me on opening day published a follow-up piece titled, "Local Dream Under Attack, The Sweet Memories Story." By closing time, we had sold out of everything, including experimental recipes I'd normally never put in the display case. Several customers left generous tips with notes of encouragement. One elderly gentleman pressed a business card into my hand as he left. He was a glass repair specialist offering to fix our window at cost. The next morning, I arrived at 5 a.m. to find 2 people already waiting outside. "We're from Stone Street Bakery," the woman explained. "We heard what happened. We brought you some backup inventory so you don't have to start from scratch today." I was speechless. Stone Street was a well-established bakery across town, technically a competitor, yet here they were with boxes of croissants and muffins to help us through the morning rush. "The baking community sticks together," the man explained with a wink. "Besides, any enemy of Amber Prescott is a friend of ours. That woman has tried to put us all out of business." Throughout the day, more local business owners stopped by. The coffee shop around the corner offered to create a Sweet Memories special featuring my cookies. The bookstore 2 doors down suggested a joint promotion. The Neighborhood Business Alliance invited me to join their monthly meeting. Ellen returned that afternoon with news. "My post has over 50,000 shares," she reported triumphantly. "And I've been contacted by Channel 7 News. They want to do a feature on small business resilience, focusing on your story." "My story?" I echoed, overwhelmed. "Local baker overcomes family betrayal and corporate sabotage to follow her dreams. That's ratings gold, honey." The following week brought a whirlwind of activity. The news segment aired, painting Amber's chain as a corporate bully targeting a family-owned business. Orders flooded in. I hired 2 more employees just to keep up. The neighboring businesses banded together to create Sweet Street Saturdays, featuring special promotions from all of us. The first event brought so much foot traffic that even with Zoe, Ryan, and the new staff, we barely managed. Then came the anonymous envelope. It arrived with no return address, containing a single sheet of paper, a copy of Grandma Alossa's will with certain passages highlighted. The sum of $50,000, to be used specifically for the establishment of her bakery business. And most critically, a section I'd never seen before. "If any family member impedes or prevents Abigail from receiving or using this inheritance as intended, the executor is instructed to establish a trust in Abigail's name with an additional $50,000 from my estate, accessible only to her." A post-it note was attached. "You should talk to a different lawyer. Blanchard was paid to hide this codicil." The handwriting was familiar, my mother's. I took the document to attorney Lisa Chen, who specialized in probate law. After reviewing it, she looked up with a smile. "This is legitimate," she confirmed, "and given the circumstances, we have grounds not just for recovering the original inheritance, but also activating this trust provision, plus interest and possibly damages for intentional interference." "Can we really win against my father?" I asked. "He has powerful connections." "So do I," Lisa replied, "and I particularly enjoy cases where powerful men underestimate women, but more importantly, you have evidence and the law on your side." That same day, I received a text from Michael, "Urgent, meet me at the supplier warehouse." I rushed over, fearing another crisis, only to find Michael in heated conversation with Amber in the loading area. "What's happening?" I asked. Michael turned, his expression a mix of anger and triumph. "Amber was telling her staff to buy up all the organic flour and European butter in stock to block your access to supplies." Several other bakers stood nearby, arms crossed, clearly having interrupted whatever was happening. "We don't play those games here," said Marcus, the warehouse manager. "The Supplies Association has rules against monopolizing ingredients." Amber's face was flushed with embarrassment as she realized she'd been caught. This is ridiculous. I was simply placing a bulk order. For 3 times your normal amount, specifically requesting the brands Abigail uses, Marcus raised an eyebrow. And instructing your people to grab it before Sweet Memories can. I heard you myself. The other bakers, all owners of small shops like mine, formed a united front. Several shared their own stories of Amber's cutthroat tactics over the years. By the end of the confrontation, the Suppliers Association had issued Amber a formal warning and assured me of fair access to ingredients. As we left, one of the bakers pressed a business card into my hand. We're having an informal alliance meeting Thursday night. Small business owners supporting each other against chains like hers. You should join us. Back at the bakery, I found a surprise visitor waiting, my mother, looking uncharacteristically nervous without my father beside her. Can we talk privately? She asked. In my tiny office, she fidgeted with her designer handbag. I sent the will copy, she confessed immediately. Your father doesn't know. Why now? I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. It's a little late, Mom. Because I was wrong, she said simply. We were all wrong, watching that news segment, seeing what you've built, what you've overcome. I'm ashamed, Abigail. She explained that my father had dominated their marriage for decades. She'd gone along with his decisions to keep the peace, including the theft of my inheritance. It doesn't excuse what I did, she acknowledged. But I want to make it right. I have documents, emails, bank statements showing how they diverted your money, and I'll testify about it if needed. I studied the woman before me, this new version of my mother showing something I'd rarely seen, backbone. Why should I trust you now? I asked. You shouldn't, she replied honestly. But I'm hoping you'll give me the chance to earn back your trust. I've spent my life being what your father wanted. Maybe it's time I tried supporting what my daughter needs instead. It was a start, not forgiveness, but a crack in the wall between us. The following weeks brought more developments. The lawsuit against my family proceeded, with my mother's evidence strengthening our case considerably. The news of Amber using my grandmother's recipes without permission, technically intellectual property theft, led to a separate cease and desist action. My father and Jason attempted to counter with their own legal maneuvers, but their position weakened daily as more evidence of their schemes came to light. Jason's connection to Craig, now facing criminal charges for the vandalism, further damaged their credibility. Sweet Memories continued to thrive. 6 months after opening, we were consistently profitable. Abigail and I began discussing a potential second location in the Arts District, a small space, manageable growth rather than rapid expansion. I've been thinking, Michael said one evening as we reviewed the quarterly financials. This business is solid now. Have you considered taking on a proper business partner? Someone with skin in the game, not just as an investor. Are you proposing a business partnership or something more? I teased, though my heart raced. Both, eventually, he admitted with a smile. But let's start with the business part. I've drawn up some ideas. His expansion plan was thoughtful and sustainable, a gradual growth model that maintained our quality and values while building financial security. It felt right, like all the pieces finally falling into place. That night, as I locked up the bakery alone, I looked around at what I'd built despite every obstacle. Grandma Los's recipe book sat prominently on a shelf behind the counter, its worn leather a reminder of where I'd come from and who had truly believed in me from the beginning. We did it, Grandma, I whispered to the empty shop. Not exactly how we planned, but we did it. And somewhere between the scent of sugar and vanilla, I could have sworn I felt her presence, proud and unwavering in her belief that this was exactly where I was meant to be. 1 year after Sweet Memories opened its doors, I stood in front of the crowd gathered for our anniversary celebration. The bakery had been transformed for the event, twinkling lights, flowers everywhere, and a table laden with our most popular creations from the past. I want to thank everyone who helped make this dream possible, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. Especially those of you who stood by us during those difficult early days. So much had changed in 12 months. The second location in the Arts District was now open, a cozy space specializing in artistic pastries and cake decorating classes. Our staff had grown to 12 employees across both shops, and Sweet Memories had been featured in National Baking Magazine as one of the top 10 new bakeries worth traveling for. The legal battle with my family had concluded 3 months earlier with a settlement that felt like vindication. Not only had they repaid my original inheritance with interest, but the activation of Grandma Alos's trust provision doubled the amount. The court had also mandated a public apology from Jason and my father for their interference with my business. That apology, printed in the business section of the city paper, had been grudging and minimal, but it was there in black and white for everyone to see. More satisfying was watching their faces as they signed the settlement documents, finally facing consequences for their action. Amber's chain had faced its own reckoning. The lawsuit over unauthorized use of my grandmother's recipes had expanded when other bakers came forward with similar complaints. The resulting legal and PR disaster had tanked her business. 3 locations had already closed, with rumors that bankruptcy was imminent. My mother stood in the corner of the bakery now, helping serve champagne to guests. Our relationship remained a work in progress, but she had proven her commitment to change. She volunteered at the bakery twice a week, initially in an administrative role but gradually learning to bake simple items. I discovered she had a talent for precise decorative work that even Zoe admired. "She's got a steady hand," Zoe had commented after watching my mother pipe intricate patterns on cookies. "Must be where you got it from." The most surprising development had come last month when Jason approached me outside the original bakery location. He looked different, humbled, his designer clothes replaced by more modest attire. "Abby," he'd said awkwardly, "I was wondering if we could talk." Over coffee at the cafe next door, I wasn't ready to invite him into my space yet. He explained that his business had collapsed completely. His tech venture had failed, then his investment in Amber's bakery chain had soured, and finally, his consulting clients had abandoned him after the public scandal. "I'm starting over," he told me, unable to meet my eyes. "Dad's cut me off, says I'm a disappointment." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "I know I don't deserve your help," he continued, "but I thought maybe you might know someone who needs, I don't know, an accountant or something. I do still have my MBA, for whatever that's worth." It would have been easy to turn him away, to savor the reversal of our positions. But something in his genuine humility stopped me. "I don't have a job for you," I said finally, "and I'm not ready to have you in my life again, but I know Marcus at the supplier warehouse is looking for someone in their finance department. I can give him your number, the rest would be up to you." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a small bridge across a vast chasm. My father remained the only holdout, refusing all contact except through attorneys. His pride wouldn't allow him to acknowledge my success or his role in nearly destroying it. Sometimes that still hurt, but I was learning that family isn't always defined by blood. And special thanks to the person who believed in sweet memories from the beginning, I continued in my anniversary speech, raising my glass toward Michael. My business partner, my support system, and as of last night, my fiancé. The crowd erupted in cheers as Michael joined me at the front, slipping his arm around my waist. The vintage sapphire ring his grandmother's sparkled on my finger, a perfect complement to the flowered hands that wore it. After the formal part of the celebration, I found myself drawn to the wall, where we'd hung Grandma Alos's original recipe book in a custom display case. Next to it was a framed photo of her in her kitchen, flour on her cheeks, smiling at the camera with the same joy I now felt every day in my own bakery. Ellen appeared beside me, admiring the display. "Your grandmother would be beyond proud," she said, squeezing my arm gently. "I like to think she somehow orchestrated all of this," I confided. "Even the hard parts, like she knew what I would need to become strong enough for this life." "Speaking of orchestration," Ellen replied with a mischievous smile, "have you seen today's business section?" She handed me a folded newspaper. There, in a small article at the bottom of the page, was the announcement that Sweet Memories had been chosen to provide desserts for the governor's annual charity gala, prestigious contract that normally went to established, decades-old bakery. "How did this happen?" I gasped. "Let's just say you've made some influential fans this past year," Ellen winked. "People who appreciate both your pastries and your perseverance." As the celebration continued around me, I took a moment to truly absorb how far I'd come. From a corporate cubicle to owning 2 thriving bakeries. From family betrayal to finding my true support system. From nearly losing everything to creating something even more meaningful than I'd originally envisioned. Sweet Memories wasn't just a bakery anymore, it was proof that dreams could survive even the worst betrayals. It was evidence that sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. and it was living testimony to my grandmother's belief that baking isn't just about following recipes, it's about pouring your heart into something that brings people joy. Later that night, after the guests had gone and Michael and I were cleaning up, I found a quiet moment to stand alone in my bakery. The space hummed with contentment, with accomplishment, with promise. "We did it, Grandma," I whispered again, this time with certainty rather than hope, "and this is just the beginning." What's your story of overcoming family skepticism to follow your dreams? Have you ever had to rebuild after betrayal? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this journey, and share with anyone who needs a reminder that sometimes the rockiest paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. Thank you for being part of the Sweet Memories story. I can't wait to share more chapters with you all.